we're going to go ahead and get started. So I'm so excited to have Robin with me. I love to talk to other shepherdesses and farmers. I think it's just so fascinating. Everybody does things differently, and I just, I love to have those conversations. So Robin, I'm going to have you introduce yourself, talk briefly about your farm, and then we're going to get to some questions that I have. And then if our audience has questions, if you want to put that in the chat, I will find the chat here.
I'm not seeing the chat function, so I'll rely on you to relay questions to me.
Yep, I opened it up, so we're good.
Okay.
Ron.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us, and a special thanks to Teddy and the WAFA group for hosting these fireside chats. I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to connect with some folks that I wouldn't otherwise. And it's always good to talk to a fellow shepherd because we're always so busy we don't get to just talk. So I appreciate that. I'm Robin Nistock from Nistock Farms. We are located in the south central part of New York State in the Finger Lakes region. So right in wine country with a lot of hills and valleys. My husband and I own and operate Nistock Farms. It was his family's dairy farm. And we're actually just 2 years away from being a century farm. So when I married him, I got into dairy cattle, which, I had never been exposed to before. And that was our lifestyle until 2000. His father had passed away, and although we could still manage the work, a lot of the joy had gone out of it. And when we married in 1990, I brought a small nucleus flock with me from my father's flock. So when the dairy cattle went, we transitioned more fully into sheep. And by then I had gotten my feet fairly well planted as far as what I wanted to do with fiber things. So then it just evolved from there. So I got my Cotswolds in 2000. I originally came with just a mishmash of crossbreds, but the first registered animals I had were in the Natural Colored Wool Growers Association because I loved the colors and I loved the fact that you could have a variety of fleece types and yet they could still be all under the umbrella of that registry. All wool is good wool, and at that time in 1990, I hadn't settled on a breed or a type that I really most loved. So I started with those, and then in 2000, I segued into Cotswolds after I'd seen them at a state fair. And I just, pardon me, I really loved their size, their temper, and of course their fleece, which is a luster long wool. I love the curls, and people just love what they love. Boxer people love boxers. Persian cat people love Persians. I just loved the big breeds of animals, and so I was smitten with Cotswolds. So we went from there, and it's just evolved. We kept adding. I mean, wool is so versatile. You can do anything with it. And I just kept adding things that I was doing with it and offering it for sale and accessories to go with. And my husband is a woodworker. He'd always liked to work with wood, but after the dairy cattle went, he had more time to do things like that. And I had gotten a skein winder, and he was underwhelmed with it and said, I can do better than that. And so
with that.
So he built one, and then my cousin, who is a rug hooker, asked if he could build some rug hooking frames for her shop. So he started doing that, and it just went boom. And so now we have our fingers in a lot of different pots, and there's not enough of us to go around, but we're pretty happy.
I think that's interesting. I have met a lot of fiberists who are then attached to a woodworker. It's such a great combination, right?
It works out great because he comes at it from the construction and sturdiness and precision, and I come at it from the aesthetic and the functionality and how does it feel as well as how does it look. Yep. So it's a really good blending of ideas that way.
Yep. So I want to come back to a couple of things you said. You said you came into the relationship with sheep from your father's herd. So you had been doing sheep all along?
Yeah, my parents always kept a flock of sheep. I can't remember a time we didn't have any, except for a few years after we had um, dog damage. It was a real massacre, and it took the heart out of my dad for a while, and we didn't have sheep for a few years. But he liked them so much, then we got another flock. They were just crossbreds, they kept the pastures mowed, and at that time, you could actually make some money taking wool to the wool pool.
Right.
So, excuse me, I always enjoyed lambing time and shearing time and the tasks that you did every year. It kind of helped mark the seasons and roll along. And so, my father passed away while I was in college. The flock was dispersed, but a neighbor kept a few of them for me with the thought that perhaps I would want them in the future. And although I hadn't met my husband at that time, I was very glad that they had, because then I had a little nucleus of my dad's flock, and that's what I brought with me. And we still laugh because when we got married, I had 11 sheep, and I said, "Oh, honey, they're just for me, just like pets, and I'll, just work with their fleece myself." And yeah,
Yeah.
it went from there.
Right. Oh, that's lovely that kind of started your own then
Yeah,
sheep
yeah,
adventure.
it's almost like the sourdough bread starter, the friendship bread that keeps going and keeps going.
Right. Yeah. So the other thing you said is that all wool is good wool. And I love that. There truly is a use,
Absolutely.
you
Every
know.
single type of wool has a purpose. Um, I would love to see more producers really understand what their wool can and can't do, so
Yeah.
that they can better educate folks who are looking for things, because so often an eager buyer has a misconception, and
Yeah.
if you don't gently set them straight, they will end up disappointed. And not only will they be disappointed, but it could reflect back on you if they talk about, this wasn't right, when in fact they just didn't know what they wanted.
Right. Yeah.
So
Well, and I
I'm,
also think so many people are looking for fine wool, because they
yeah,
want it to be next to the skin soft. And so I think sometimes producers who don't produce, that really low micron, then are hesitant or embarrassed to promote their fiber.
right.
Now that I do tapestry, it's so different. I'm looking for texture. I'm looking for so many different things than I
Mhm.
was as a garment knitter. And it's just opened up this world.
It really does, and it's so helpful to be able to walk the walk.
Yeah.
Um, we had a time where we were producing freezer lambs. I didn't enjoy it at all, but reality says that there are some animals that aren't going to make the cut as far as retained breeding stock and things like that. Um, we tried a couple of different ways to market the lambs, and the way that ended up feeling most responsible for the animals, and also most um, that we were able to get the most from, was to have them go through a USDA slaughter facility, and then we sold individual packaged cuts ourselves
Oh, sure.
rather than sell whole or half animals. So we did that, and folks, um, I often talk to people who want to get into selling lamb, and I say, well, what kind of lamb do you like to eat? Oh, I don't eat it. And I'm like, you're going to have a hard time selling your product if you don't know what it's like, you don't know what it tastes like, you don't know how to cook it. You have to be able to talk authoritatively from experience about your product, whether it's lamb or whether it's wool.
Right.
So if you are producing wool, you best know how to spin it, how to felt it, how to dye it, what it can do and what it can't do.
Yeah.
And if you are excited and passionate about your fiber, that excitement will translate to the buyer, because they'll go, "Oh, I didn't know I could do that. Thank you for telling me, and I will buy some and go home and do that." So you really need to immerse yourself for best results.
Yeah. Whatever that, even if you're not a shepherd, I think,
Mhm,
I
mhm.
think sometimes I feel like it's so decadent to spin things that I card,
Uh-huh.
that needs to be on the sale rack, right?
Right, right,
But you have to, because you're right. You just have to be able to speak knowledgeably about that. So
right, right. And it doesn't matter if you're small. I mean, you can just have a few animals, but you need to understand what their fleeces are or what their lambs are going to be like or whatever it is you're going to be selling. You have to understand it inside and out so that you can be confident when you're talking to the person that, yes, this is what you want, or no, maybe this isn't what you want. You want that over there.
Right. Yeah. Because everyone isn't for everyone.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And I'm a very rising tide lifts all boats people. So if I don't
Yes.
have, if I don't have what they want, but I know who does, I'll
Oh,
shove them right over there. Here,
me
go over
too.
there and get it.
Me too. There's
Yeah,
room for everyone. Yep.
absolutely. Our only competition is off our shores. So,
Right.
and even at that, some breeds you can only get from other countries. So,
True.
but if you're going to be competitive, I do it with other countries.
Right. So tell me about your operation. How many animals do you have? What's it? What do you have in your flock?
Okay. Um, let's see. Right now, the farm has 535 acres. When we were a dairy farm, there was pasture and cropland and woodland. When the dairy cattle were sold, we kept all our machinery and our land, so we produce all our own hay. Um, we lease a lot of the cropland now to another farmer so that it's still under production. But the sheep have a lot of pasture. Right now, we're down to about 92 animals. And at our peak, we were 145.
Wow.
But my husband and I'm 60, he's 69. And he pointed out very kindly and gently that if our sheep live as long as they normally do, and right now our very oldest girl will be 18 if she makes it to the spring,
Wow.
if lambs live a full long life, he says, I'm going to be in my mid 70s and I'm not going to be able to put up 4,000 bales of hay. And I said, oh, yeah. I don't think of things like that. I just do the next day. I don't think
Yeah.
10 years down the road. So we stopped breeding animals about 5 years ago.
Okay.
And we're letting the flock become smaller just through the course of nature.
Sure.
Nobody's leaving on a truck or anything like that. Everybody's staying here and they're all going to be buried out in the field as they go. Um, and it's funny, I spent the first 20 years learning pregnancy and neonates and things like that. And now I'm learning geriatrics and arthritis and things like that.
Yeah.
So we're managing the
Oh.
flock differently. But with 90 plus animals and a backlog of wool that I'm embarrassed to talk about, I'm going to be doing wool for a long time.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, we're about 92 animals. And the flock is the registered Cotswolds, but then I also have a lot of crossbreds with mixes of Border Leicester, some CVM Rambouillet, because I got some Morit colored animals when I was in the Natural Colored Wool Growers Association. I wanted that red color. So I've got that background. I've got a little Finn, I've got a little Romney, I've got a little of this and that. But over the years when we were breeding, all the animals that stayed were retained because of their superior fleece character or because they were bottle lambs and I couldn't do anything else with them but keep them. So
Yep. Oh, so do you have this variety? Do you have a favorite wool fiber to work with?
I'm a sucker for shiny, which is funny because I don't wear flashy clothes, but there's just something about a glittering, shiny fleece that really turns me on. So anything with the Cotswold influence, or even some of the Leicester and Romney influence that has a lot of glitter and shine to it. I really love those fleeces. They're just silky sexy. I just
Right.
really like the way they look and feel.
So you said you have a backlog of fiber. You're not alone. Even on a tiny farm, I have, and our sheep are gone now. I still have. So do you send it to the mill? Do you process it all yourself? Huh.
I do both. I I skirt it all myself. If it's going to be dyed, I wash it and dye it myself, and then it goes to a mill to be made into roving. Um, I have had yarn made, and I need to have more yarn made. In the past, when I have done that, I've sent it away raw because, and I understand, the people with mills are so particular about the quality of the washing that I thought it was probably just safer in the long run to let them wash it to their specifications rather than have me do an inadequate job. So I have sent that off raw. I have a new mill fairly near me that I want to try. And she said, if I want to wash it and it's acceptable, then I will get moved up in the line because it'll be ahead of the game. So I'm
Oh,
going to
sure.
give that a try and see how it works. But anything that's dyed, I do the dyeing myself, whether I dye the washed fleece as locks and then send it off to be milled into roving, or whether it comes back as yarn, or I just dye the locks. I do all the dyeing myself, and I really like that. That's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's a whole nother artistic avenue.
Very much,
Yeah.
very much.
Yeah.
And I really enjoy, thank goodness I don't have to hit too many colors exactly. I do have some recipes for some of my yarn colorways so that I can repeat them. But a lot of times it's just the fun of thinking, I want a red, but I want it to be kind of an orangey red or a browny red. And so I can play in the dyes that way. And that's just a lot of fun too.
Oh,
There's no bad color. Some color is good for everybody. So
right. Not always what you expected, but like
very much.
there's a use for it. Yeah.
Yep, very much. And when I do a multicolored roving, I always make sure to spin a skein of it and have it in the bag with the roving, because it's astounding how differently the yarn will come out sometimes than what you think it's going to be when you just look at a bag of mixed colored roving.
Yeah.
And that helps buyers.
What?
I say, and that helps the buyers a lot too. So many people say, oh, I wouldn't have expected that.
Right. Yeah,
Yep.
for sure. You mentioned bottle lambs.
Yes.
How do you feel about when you have bottle lambs? Maybe we should talk about what a bottle lamb is.
Okay, a bottle lamb is a lamb that needs help from a human because their mother can't do the job, whether it's because she's become ill or gotten mastitis and can't produce enough milk, or she has outdone herself and given you triplets or quads and she simply can't feed them all.
Or just refused. Yeah.
Or just refused. It just refused. Yeah. Knock wood. I never had a big problem with that. Just one or two over the years.
Yeah.
But so a bottle lamb is a lamb that you have to raise, and you get ridiculously attached to them because they're so happy to see you and you're their mother and they follow you, and you can't do normal things with bottle lambs. So
pushy, they're pushy.
They're pushy.
No boundaries. Yeah.
That's right. But oh my gosh, they're so sweet. Right now, my favorite bottle lamb, she's going on 10. Her name's Peanut, and she's a Cotswold. And when we're, just walking around loose, I'm in the barn or in the yard or wherever, she'll come up to me and she'll throw one front leg over my leg and just stand with her leg over my leg. And it's like she's hugging me with her leg.
I love that.
It's the sweetest thing. And she does it all the time. So, it's obviously a relationship in her head. It's not just me thinking she's being friendly.
Right.
I mean something to her. So yeah, bottle lambs are fun.
Right. I think my perception is that in a bigger operation, I mean, I don't think I ever had more than maybe 15 sheep and 6 at the end. That for me, it feels like that's a bigger burden for a larger operation.
Yeah.
At some point I decided we've had goats forever and we've always raised the goats on the bottle. So raising the sheep on the bottle wasn't very different, except for they jumped out of the baby pen in the kitchen earlier. But they would, Fiona, who was my favorite, she would see me way out, 5 acres out, and she would run in to come for treats,
Yeah.
Sheep are just not like that, but the bottle babies are just,
bottle babies do that. And who could not have their heart swell when an animal, across the pasture goes and runs towards you.
Right. So. But a lot of work. I mean, it's round the clock feeding and care. They don't integrate with the flock in the same way.
No, that's
sometimes.
True. Yeah. That's true. It depends. If you have a couple of them, you can transition them out of the house into a dedicated pen in the barn early, and they can be companions for each other. Right. That's optimal. Right. I know really big operations know they're going to have bummer lambs. And so they have a dedicated pen, and they have kind of almost automated bucket feeding systems, and there's a lot less hands-on.
Yeah.
But I was not of a size that was, I mean, I could have, but it wasn't that much of a hardship to do it by hand. So you have my jug of milk replacer in my bottles and go out there and feed them. And
Yep.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And, I didn't, I don't think any of my bottle lambs ended up being breeding animals. Not because they didn't necessarily have a big fault that would have prevented it, but there was always in the back of my mind that maybe there's a reason they're a bottle lamb. There's something that might not be quite right. And also, breeding an animal is a risk. And when I got so attached to certain animals, I'm like, I don't think I want to risk losing you with a bad lambing, and then I'd feel guilt for the rest of my life that I killed you. I mean, they live and die at our whim, and
Right.
and breeding is the same thing. I risk them every time I breed them. So
Indeed. Yeah.
yeah,
Huh.
yeah,
Interesting.
yeah. How many goats did you have, or
Uh,
do you have?
well, I transitioned out of sheep and dairy goats in the last year and a half.
Uh-huh.
So, and again, our operation wasn't very big.
Uh-huh.
We had enough. I have a goat milk soap and lotion business. And so, we
Uh-huh.
had maybe at the end, I think we had half a dozen, and
Uh-huh.
we had Nigerians at that point. So little and manageable, and
Mhm.
escape artists. So now we have Angoras, and I
Huh?
had never had goats with horns before either. So
Mhm.
that's been a whole lesson in bruises and personal space, and
Uh-huh.
all that.
Uh-huh.
So we've talked a lot about farming, and I think sometimes the farm life is really romanticized. I
Yep.
often do classes, and people will say, "Oh, I would just love to do this." And I don't want to discourage people. It's a lovely life,
It is.
but it's sometimes hard.
It's at the very best, it's restrictive,
Right.
because you are responsible for your animal's well-being, and that includes food, water, shelter, protection from the elements, protection from predators, um, and you can't just go on vacation, because farm sitters are scarcer than hen's teeth.
Yeah.
And even farm sitters you need to trust. And
Right.
that's a tough stretch. And there's going out to take care of the animals when you're sick. You need to be in the bathroom, but you need to be in the barn too.
Yep.
And when we had the dairy cattle, they were even more restrictive than the sheep. I mean, we literally planned our wedding around the cattle schedule, and we
You had
planned,
to milk.
yeah, we had to find people that were
Yep.
responsible enough to milk. And when my father-in-law passed away, we had to plan the funeral and the calling hours around the cow schedule. And that's not a thing that people even think about unless they're in those animals. And yeah, even with sheep, then there's the hard decision of, I need the vet. Can I get a vet? Right now, we've got a veterinary shortage in the US. We're 15,000 veterinarians short, and large animals in particularly are especially hard hit. Um, I don't think I could get an emergency veterinarian in
Huh.
my area right now. Um,
Wow.
I have a veterinarian that will come if I need them Monday through Friday, 9 to 5,
Mm.
and I'm grateful for that. And I know
Right. But
there are other people that don't even have that available to them. So, for anyone getting into animals, you need to think about, who do I need besides myself? I need a vet, I need a shearer. I'm going to need a reliable source of feed if,
yeah.
for in the winter. Where am I going to get my hay? Things like that. It's a lot of working through your worst case scenario and then having a plan for it.
Right.
What could possibly go wrong in this situation, and then try and
Right.
figure it out.
Yeah. And like having toddlers all the time. I mean, in the big scheme of things, they never grow up. You're always worried about all of those things.
Right, right, right. I can't tell you how obsessive we are about did I shut that gate? I think I did, but maybe my memory is from last night shutting that gate. And so you put your coat back on, you go down, you check the gate.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you brought that little herd with you into the marriage,
Yeah.
were you already doing fiber things?
Yeah, I had in a small way, I was just getting started. I had learned how to hand spin at the shoot, I can't remember the place. It was a museum up in Rochester. And the teacher taught us on a drop spindle. And I admit that I didn't catch on with the drop spindle very well, but I just had this need to know how to do it. There's just some things that I ought to be able to do that. Why can't I? I should be able to do this. And I finally borrowed a wheel. And for some reason that clicked. I didn't have a problem with the treadling and the drafting where a lot of people do. And that worked for me. And then later I could go back and I could drop spindle with no problem. I'm like, what was my problem? But so, yeah, I learned to spin in like the late 80s. And then we got married in 1990. So it was all just starting at the same time, kind of. And I didn't have any idea of what I was going to do with my yarn after I made it because I wasn't already a knitter or a weaver or anything like that. It's just, I should make something out of this. People make yarn. I should be able to make yarn. So I learned.
So when did that part of the business then kick off?
After we were married, a neighbor had recently joined the Genesee Valley Hand Spinners Guild, which is our nearest guild. And she knew I had sheep. She had Lincolns at the time, and she invited me to go along to a meeting. And so I walked in, and it's like, these are my people. They, everybody had a wheel or a spindle. There were bags of fiber, and they were all blah, 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 talking about the newest dye or the this or the that. And once I had a tribe, that was, that helped me learn better what I was doing. But then I also could bring fiber in, and they're like, well, where'd you get that? Well, this is from my sheep. Do you sell it? And I'm like, I could.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so then it went from there. Once I had an outlet, I'm like, well, here's a need. I will fill their need. And that worked out great. So that was one outlet. And then I was introduced to fiber festivals in general. And I'm like, I think I have enough stuff to do a festival. And I could do like one festival a year because it took me all that time to make enough stuff to have a decent booth. And we were still milking cattle at that time, so I didn't have a ton of time. So I had like an 8 to 10 year period where I was getting my feet wet and getting myself organized. And then when the cattle left and the sheep could expand, then I could, more fully launch into bigger production and stuff. It started out mostly just raw fleeces. Just that was what I mostly sold.
Okay.
And that is still a big chunk of what I do. But when you have so much raw fleece, you can make roving and then you can make yarn and, other things. So there's just not enough of me to go around because I have so many ideas and I just lack the time to execute.
Same. It's just, there just aren't enough hours in the day for all the things, right?
Right.
Yeah. Are you still doing fiber festivals?
I am. I think I've got either 8 or 9 lined up this year. I do most of them in New York State. Probably most of them are 1-dayers. There's one that's a 2-dayer. I do 1 2-day festival in Pennsylvania, and I do the Maryland Sheep and Wool Festival.
Okay. As a vendor, do you take animals to show? What?
I did show animals for a few years in the early 2000s. I'm glad I did. It wasn't my passion to win things. I found it very valuable. It just in comparing my animals to other animals and the breed standard but it's a little tricky to navigate in a show ring situation because it's not inexpensive to attend and be there. And there's a lot of prep work to get the animal fitted and stuff. And I just couldn't make myself cut those fleeces back as much as you
Oh,
usually see in the show ring. So I
right.
tended to have my animals in longer wool, and I never chased the extremes that seem to do well in the show ring. I
Yeah.
much prefer the British version of card grading, where you're judged against the breed standard,
Oh,
not against
sure.
the other animals in the ring.
Yeah.
Um, so I kind of use the show ring more as promotional advertising. Look, I'm here. You can see
Yep.
my animals in person, that sort of thing, rather than trying to win.
Yeah.
Um, but then I got more aware of the biosecurity issue of it. Um, the Scrapie program was just getting kicked off, and it was a pain in the neck to try and keep my animals separated from the animals on the other
Yep.
sides
Yep.
pens of me. And for a variety of reasons, the cost, the time involved, things like that, I ended up stopping showing my animals.
Okay.
So I did it, and I'm glad I did it. It was a valuable experience, but it wasn't my passion.
Again, just so many hours in a day.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
It's
yep.
hard to show and vend and teach,
Yeah.
all in
And
one.
right. I mean, if I'm away from home, I'm not producing the things that I need to be selling to support the farm. It's like it's kind of a double-edged
Yeah.
coin.
Yeah.
And eh, like the biggest shows, say the Maryland Sheep and Wool Festival, that happens in the first weekend of May. People that show a lot, they lamb in November or
Mm.
December, so that they have lambs for the lamb classes. I was just coming off of lambing because I'm a more traditional
Yeah.
type of lamb in the spring.
Me too.
So, my sheep had just been shorn. Nobody was in decent fleece. The ewes had just had lambs. The lambs were still tiny. That was not a good time. We put up all our own hay during the summer, and there's just the two of us. So I couldn't be gone for a week traipsing off to some show or other just to show a few animals that I knew weren't going to be at the top of the class.
Right.
So again, it was valuable, and I'm glad I did it, but it just wasn't my thing.
Right. So I was going to ask that. You said it's just the two of you. Is it still just the two of you?
Yeah, yeah, just us two and a dog.
What kind of dog do you have?
Oh, we call her a borderline collie.
Nice.
She she was billed as a collie. I got her from a rescue. And from the picture, I'm like, well, there are black and sable collies, and she was a pup, sort of, kind of a 6 months, but it was a rescue situation. And she ends up being probably border collie, probably a little shepherd, maybe some standard collie. But she's our mascot. We don't really need a working dog. The sheep know the routine. They know where they're going. We call them, they come in. So a working dog would be bored to tears.
Yeah, I think I go ahead with the grain bucket, and sometimes the dog brings along at the end.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
That's that's the best way that works for me. And then my dog doesn't have to be, we have English Shepherds, so they're just not as intense as a border collie.
Right, right. And
Yeah.
when I looked for a new dog after our old girl passed away, I was actually trying to avoid a border collie because they are intense, and I knew that one would be bored. And I'm thinking, well, standard collie is nice. I like their temperament. But I ended up with a quasi borderline collie. So in fact, I'll turn the camera. She's sleeping right there.
Oh.
So, yep, it's just my husband and I, and our parents have both passed away, and we never had kids, either of us, and so it's just us two and the 4-footers. But we're content that way. We tend to be quiet natured people, so we just stay home and do our thing and are content.
Wonderful. Other things that you'd like to share with us about your farm, your animals, your fiber?
Oh, gee, I don't know. Just there's so many interesting rabbit holes to go down. Um, I've picked up rug hooking and rug punching,
Oh,
which I really enjoy. in my not really spare time, but I've found that if I take them to a show, I actually work on them more at a show, so that I'm demonstrating to people.
Yeah.
Um, and the Cotswold is really good rug yarn. So I've had my own, rug yarn made, and I can dye my own yarn and make my own. It's just all the things, make my own pattern, make my own yarn, make my own whatever. And it just all takes time. But
Yeah.
it's it's definitely a lifestyle. It's not a thing you can easily pick up or set down and then pick up again.
Right.
Um, Animals are kind of do or do not.
Right.
There's no in between.
Yeah.
Um, but if you find a thing you're really passionate about, go ahead and jump in with both feet, because if you're passionate, that will translate to other people. Whether you're teaching or whether you're trying to sell what you're producing, if you can use it and you're excited about it, that will translate to other people too.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think, that what you talked about not getting away, I think that's a really important thing.
Yeah,
Right. And I don't travel very often anyway. And I love being here on the farm. So generally speaking, that's not a hardship, but it is nearly impossible to get
yeah.
away. And you're right, if you have milking animals, when we had the goats, a
Mhm.
whole other skill that you have to find in a farm sitter,
Yep, yep,
you
yep.
know.
Well,
Yeah.
I know we did go on a honeymoon, my husband and I. We actually went to Singapore. I have a cousin who's a professor of anthropology at the University of Singapore, and he offered come and stay with me. So we did. And that, even though Andy's dad was alive at that time and, could oversee the hired help, he was still had the heebie-jeebies all the time he was away, because just one misstep can mess everything up. And the unfortunate story he would relate is a neighboring dairyman who had to be away for some reason. He left things under control with his hired man who knew the routine, but
Right.
unfortunately, the teat dip had to be diluted, and the hired man didn't understand the dilution rate properly, did not dilute it as necessary, used the teat dip at a high concentration, burned every teat on every cow, and
Oh,
it was irreparable. He was done. His dairy was done. They were all milking animals, and there was no way to milk them. Their teats were ruined, and it
oh,
was just one mistake by somebody that you thought would have known better. So, that sort of knowledge in the back of your head that the best laid plans can still destroy your livelihood,
yep.
it gives you the heebie-jeebies.
Yeah.
So, um, we're constantly checking, electrical outlets in the barn, light switches, light bulbs. We don't have too many extension cords. There's a few that we have for different things, and we're always checking to make sure they're up. The strings holding them are still good. They're not where rats are chewing on them or some darn thing like that. So if you have animals, you have a constant state of paranoia in the back of your head of what could go wrong. And I really need to check this, and I can't check it if I'm not home.
Yeah.
So
Well, and I
thank
think
God.
we notice things, I
Yeah.
know the sheep that stands with her head in the corner
Yep.
just because that's who she is. I know another sheep standing with their head in the corner is a huge red flag, all
Right.
of those little idiosyncrasies that you notice when you just stand and look, that
Right.
a farm
Right.
sitter, no matter how much experience they have, just
Just don't, can't
just
know.
doesn't.
You can't blame them. They can't know it.
Yeah.
But it's funny. I read someplace, and I think it's true, that women tend to be more detail oriented, and they notice small things faster than a man might. Not that a man doesn't care, but there's
Right.
just something about the way women's brains are wired that they notice a little more.
Hmm.
And trust your gut. If you
Right.
think something's wrong,
Right.
check it out, because
Right.
it might be wrong. So
Right.
learn to trust yourself about stuff.
Yep.
If you don't think it's right, look into it.
Right. For
Yeah.
sure. Okay, I want to ask you a few things about where we can find you, and then we'll open up and if people want to unmute and ask questions, we'll do that. So
Sure.
you're showing this weekend.
I am. I'm
When
on
is your time?
Saturday morning at 11:30 Eastern.
Okay. All right. What kind of things are you going to have?
Let's see. I'm dyeing a bunch of wool curls right now, so I'll have lots of curls. I have some more spinning art bats. Andy's got lots of tools, and I know that this is like a holiday market, so we're going to showcase some of his tools. I also have some Cotswold yarn dyed, and I have patterns that have been made specifically for our yarn, so we can put them together in kits, mix and match the pattern and the skein that you like. And I have most of the patterns just take one skein. So if you've never tried Cotswold, you're a little hesitant, or if you just know a knitter that would like a quick, easy project, they're fairly simple patterns. So we'll have those too.
All right, great. Where can we find you on social media? Do you have Instagram, Facebook?
We have everything. We've had a website since 2000.
Okay.
So we're nistockfarms.com, and you can actually buy things right off the website. It's not just a presence, it's actually a store site that you can buy from.
Okay, great.
We're also on Facebook at Nistock Farms and Instagram at Nistock Farms.
Okay.
So
Awesome.
you can find us anyway. And no matter how you try and contact us, we always, if we see your message, we answer in 24 hours or less. So if you've asked something and you don't get a reply, check your spam filter, because for some reason our .com email lands in spam filters way more than it seems like it ought to. So always check your spam filter.
All right. Sounds good. Okay. So yep, I'm gonna go grab the link so I can put the website in the chat, and then
Thank you.
Annie looks like has a question. So if you want to unmute yourself, Annie, and go for it, I will go and grab the website for you.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone in America.
Hi.
So I'm brand new. We have 5 alpacas I just got a couple months ago, and then I went on vacation. So that's probably one of my questions. And the bottle baby. So we have 5 kids. Is it like, quote, better to get a bottle baby because they bond with you? Or like, no, don't get a bottle baby because then they're like a dog, is what someone told me.
I guess I wouldn't get a bottle baby on purpose, because they do have a little trouble integrating into the flock later unless they're raised with some barn buddies that they can pal with. They really do feel sad and lonely, and they don't know how to be a sheep if they don't have somebody to pal with. I've found that if you want them to bond with you and they're not a bottle baby, feed them treats. They're very food oriented, at least my sheep are. And I like to feed them little alfalfa pellets. You can get a bag of them from Tractor Supply. And they're really good to keep in your pocket. And my sheep, at least, are very food motivated, and that's a good way to tame them. I don't have any experience with alpacas, but that's the way it is with sheep.
I have no experience with alpacas. So I have no sheep and no goats, and would very much like to get some of each. Do I need to have different pastures for, like, this is for the alpacas, this is for the sheep, this is for the goats? Can they all be buddies?
I don't have any experience with multi-species grazing, except I know that depending on whether the goats have horns or not, they can bully sheep. I know llamas will bully sheep. I don't know about alpacas. From a health point of view, the sheep need to have a mineral mix with no copper. They're very sensitive to copper. So you would need to at least keep them separated for that. I don't know what minerals alpacas may or may not need or not be able to handle, but sheep are quite sensitive to copper, so you can't let them have access to horse minerals, cattle minerals, things like that, goat minerals. I know there are some people who have a happy menagerie and the animals all are
Yep.
together just fine and they don't cause each other problems. I guess it's one of those things you just have to try and see how it goes in your given situation.
Okay. Then I just started spinning and I have an Astrid Traveler,
Uh-huh.
I have a honeybee, and I wanted the honeybee for our kids to spin on, and it seems like the whirl is like so fast.
Mhm.
So I'm kind of wondering, like, what do you recommend? I know there's someone who can make a different whirl, or like, what's something that you would do about that?
Have they tried spinning on a drop spindle yet?
I just ordered some. We have a Turkish, I have a Showa teal from the Basque Country in Spain.
Uh-huh.
And got those this summer and we practiced on those. And then I just ordered some today. They should be here like before Christmas that are very rudimentary.
Sure.
So my son, he really likes the Turkish and he bought his own.
Nice.
And he's plied on that. He's 13. He's also done, he's used mine, which was very expensive, brand new.
Oh, wow.
The one, which is like $100. I'm like, well, the dog eats it. I think that part might be okay. So he likes the drop spindle for sure. And then our 4-year-old, she used, what did she use? I think she used the honeybee and I helped her play, but she spun a little bit on there and they really like it.
Very good. Well, that's really encouraging that you're getting your kids involved right away and that they want to be. That's a good window to catch their interest, I think.
And do you have any tips for dyeing? I have some mohair I just got from a woman on the road, and that's my next step.
If you don't have a dedicated dye studio and equipment and stuff like that, you can use a lot of dyes right in your kitchen. You can use Kool-Aid, you can use food dyes, you can use Wilton cake dyes. There's a lot of colors there, and I've heard that they will fracture into interesting bands of color. And of course, that's food stuff, so it's perfectly safe to use in your kitchen. Be careful, it will dye your countertop or your floor or whatever it gets spilled on, but you at least don't have to worry about separate equipment that way.
Okay, that was the question about like using the different kinds of mordants and maybe like an I don't know, outside like propane stove or things like that.
The acid dyes that are available commercially now, it sounds scary with the word acid in there, but it just means that it needs a slightly acidic pH for them to take. You don't actually need a mordant per se. So when I dye, I use Jacquard dyes, and I just need to add some vinegar to my water bath because I'm on well water, which is pretty hard. Yeah. And in fact, I had been washing wool for years with no problem, and all of a sudden it started not washing clean. It was still tacky, and I couldn't figure out for the life of me what was going on. And I sought advice from somebody, and they said, your water may have changed and it's harder than it used to be. And I thought, well, that could be because we're on the same well that this farm has been on for 72 years. And so, sure, the water could have changed hardness. That seems reasonable. I started using some water softener when I wash wool, and it's made all the difference in the world. So I digressed there. But as far as dyeing is concerned, I just use water with some vinegar in it for those acid dyes, the synthetic dyes, and I don't even need a mordant. I guess the vinegar is the mordant.
Right.
But when you use natural dyes, that's I think when you need the mordants like alum or copper or tin or things like that.
Alum is the most used, so you can get alum in the grocery store in, like pickling alum.
Right, it makes your pickles crisp.
Right. And I'll say that mohair is a good medium to use with botanical dyes. Actually, it picks up all dye pretty well. But botanical dyeing is a whole other adventure. If you're interested in that, let me know. I love to work with folks who want to start doing botanical dyeing. Acid dyes I think they're a great place. Well, actually, I think the food dyes are a nice place to start. I started with Kool-Aid dyes you know, and you get, because the citric acid, the fixer is already in it. You know, and it's a fun place to start. But I would also say, even though the dye is safe in a pan you might cook in, I don't know that I would cook fiber in a pan and then use it for cooking food again.
That's a point. That's a point.
So, and the night when I did acid dyes for a while, I did them in a crock pot.
Right.
I mixed the water and the vinegar and the color and put my fiber in, and I came back the next morning and it had exhausted and it was ready to go.
Right.
It-
Right. I also have an oven. It used to be our oven in the house, and we've moved it up to my shop. And so I can put a wool in, you know, like a canner kettle or a turkey
Yeah.
roaster pan, and put it in the oven and turn the oven to just under 200, so that I'm not, you know, in danger of getting any bubbling from boiling. It's under boiling temperature. And I can dye that way in bigger lots.
Yeah.
I had one more question. I just got these murder weapons,
Ooh.
Yeah.
and I have a drum carder by Pat Green that I got used from a woman. I
Uh-huh.
didn't realize, someone told me, I can't stand when I see people carding vegetable matter.
Yeah.
Carding
Yeah.
vegetable matter, and it's just grinding it and separating it and making it in smaller bits and then evenly dispersing it into their fiber.
A carder is not a cleaning tool. Combs are a cleaning tool.
Right. Yep.
What would you say the percentage of VM is when you're actually using combs? Like, are you just going to spin some like into the yarn and that's life? What?
With combs,
Yeah. So like here,
I can get the vast majority out, but there's lots more. Well, again, a carder it's not a tool to clean with. It's just, it will just incorporate it together. Combs can be used for both. It prepares the fiber differently, and it depends, you know, I just sheared my goats. I have Angora goats, so I'm cleaning mohair. I can have as much as 50% waste from combs. So the amount of waste is different, but what you're going to end up with, the part that's clean, is going to be really pretty clean.
so are you taking the things out as you're combing? I guess I don't even understand the process. I've watched so many different videos, and people are saying like they take this and then they throw it on the floor, and other people say no, save it and make a dryer ball. I just want to spin it. So what is my goal? If I can't use the card,
what is your goal?
I don't know.
That's okay. Okay. I mean, you know, everybody has to start somewhere. I think a couple of things. One, I might start with a little bit of fiber, like commercial fiber, and learn to spin, because that's a prep that's ready to spin.
I did that for about a month. I bought lots of braids. I probably spun for like 8 hours a day, every day for
So
like 2
yeah,
months.
so you've had some good practice time. Yep.
Yeah. The baby would sleep and I would just spin, and he would sleep and I would spin. Like every time he take a nap, it was like 3 hours, 3 hours, 3 hours. And then I would stay too late and then just spin until like the wee hours.
Yeah. So I don't know. What do you think, Robin?
I agree that a drum carder isn't going to clean your fiber. It's just going to blend it. And there again, not all fiber is the same. So if you are seeking fiber with low VM to start with, you can find it. Myself, and I know a lot of other shepherds, coat their animals so that the fleece you take off has 99.999% no VM. So you can start with clean fiber. You can also take free fiber that somebody wants to give you, and just understand that you're going to throw away 80% of what they give you, because you're going to pick through and skirt and sort and try and decide if it's too much fuss to get the VM out of it. That can be a good learning experience. We have a rescue organization up near Rochester that rescues animals, including alpacas and llamas and things like that. And they will literally give away the fiber for free. So, and there are some shepherds who give away their fiber for free, especially people that have meat flocks or commercial flocks. They don't know what to do with it. It just breaks my heart when I hear about, oh yeah, we took it out to the hedgerow and burned it. I'm like,
Right.
but,
Yeah, or buried it. Yeah.
or buried it because it's not worth it to take it to the wool pool. So, experience is the best teacher. If you can lay your hands on a bunch of free fiber, go hog wild, try a bunch of different things and
It's a
see
great
what
way to
works
try
for
lots
you.
of different things. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have Cheviot in my basement because there's a dog competition woman who I made friends with.
Uh-huh.
And she said, if you just come to shearing day next year, I'll just give you whatever you want. She gave me whatever I wanted this year, which was like 15 feet of a burlap sack that a football player like team could climb into. And my basement smells like a barn. My husband's like, what are you doing? But he's okay. Yeah. And I don't know what scouring looks like. So I bought a scouring class. So now I'm kind of in the mode of, oh, way too much wool in the pot, this much water. I need like 4 times the amount of water.
Right.
But I feel like that's where I am. I want to do the 8. I want to learn everything. I don't want to spend $50 and buy a braid. I'd rather dye it myself, wash it myself, scour it myself, and learn so I can teach my children. And then get some babies and go, okay, let's have a baby Angora goat and sheep. And do you have to get them in pairs when you get them, or 3s or 4s?
All sheep and goats are herd animals. I usually ask that people get goats or get sheep in 3s. That way, if something unfortunate happens to one of the trio, there'll still be a pair. And also it'll just give a nice dynamic so that one isn't a constant bully to another one. There'll be a little triad there. So 3 is good. 3 is a good number. Ewes are great. Wethers are good. You have to be careful with wethers because they can get urinary calculi. They get calcium crystals in their bladders and they can't always pass them. And that's nearly always a sad, agonizing death sentence because by the time people realize what's going on, it's not fixable. So you certainly can get wethers. They make sweet pets and they do nothing but produce fiber and it's beautiful stuff. You just need to perhaps consult with your veterinarian about the proper feed. You can stay away from grain if they have no problem keeping weight on. If you do need or want to feed grain, you can get ammonium chloride, which is a additive, which you just sprinkle on top of their grain. And it will counteract the calcium imbalance that leads to the bladder stones. So it can be managed. Just be aware that if you have a wether, you might need a little more care feeding than with the girls.
Do you put jackets on Angora goats? No, only sheep.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the fiber will felt, and when you coat sheep, it's both an investment in money and time because each sheep needs somewhere between probably 2 and 4 coats over the course of the year, because as the fiber grows, you have to take that coat off and they just require a bigger coat. If it is in that same coat all year long, you will have lost a good chunk of the fiber because it will get so tight and rub.
Right, it'll felt right on the animal.
You have to want to. That's part of the reason that I transitioned from sheep to goats was I just couldn't rodeo the sheep 4 times a year to change their coats anymore. But that's a nice thing about bottle babies is they will come for a treat and then you can catch them, so.
Yep, very handleable.
But I would say, you're talking about a lot of information and a lot of processes. And, unless there is a compelling reason I think, part of this is it's a slow life in some ways. And to savor those parts, there is a whole art to scouring. And every process along the way will provide you at the end with a better product, whether you're using it or selling it. If you try to shortcut anywhere along the line, you will come to this product at the end and it will be frustrating.
Right.
So, when I process my fleece, I comb every lock before I wash it.
Do you? Mm-hmm.
I have a sheet that I put on my lap. I have a dog brush, and I comb, because there's lanolin in wool. It will lubricate the brush, and I'm not a detail person, so I can't sit and pick. I can't. My brain will explode. But I can sit and comb. Don't ask me why. It's not quite as detailed. And then I lay it in a cat pan with the, like a cat, how do I explain it?
A strainer?
A litter box, so there's a strainer in the top, right? I lay those across in 2 rows. I have a garden sprayer on my craft sink. By the time I've done that, if it's white fiber, it's nearly clean at that point. I'm still going to soak in water and soak in, so there's a whole process, but every investment you make along the way, 2 months from now, you will spin. You just have to I know it's not that long, but there is a real, and every time, every fleece, even if it's the same fleece from an animal year after year, will teach you something. That fiber, when you look at it, will tell you when that animal lambed, when they were sick. There's just there is a connection to be made when you are truly experiencing that. So, my recommendation is to slow down, enjoy the process, learn the process. There are lots of people that will support you. You can message me anytime. I'm, and I think Robin, right?
Absolutely.
We'll talk this until the sheep come home. So, so there's lots of support out there. Don't feel like you have to rush the process.
No.
It's going to be amazing. And every step along the way is going to teach you something.
And every step along the way is a creative outlet too.
Right.
It's not just the end point that's going to be the creative outlet.
Right.
And as far as getting animals, I mean, you said you've already got alpacas. That's great. Before you would get any more animals, whether sheep or fiber goats or whatever you get, I would ask, would you have the animals if you didn't want the fiber? Are you only getting the animals for the fiber? Because there's so much fiber out there that you can acquire easily, any color, any grade, any breed that you want, without having the difficulty of a sick animal. I want to go away and I can't find a farm sitter. My children are crushed because my animal died. A whole bunch of different things that are associated.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, all associated with livestock. So I understand wanting to get the animals so that you have their fiber, because that's really cool. But stop and think for just a second, would I even have that animal if I didn't want the fiber? I mean, maybe you really love sheep and you would have a sheep even if it was a hair sheep. In fact, go for it.
Yeah.
But if the only reason is to have the fiber, then I would wait a little bit until you get more experience.
2 years dyeing and processing and spinning mohair before I got the goats.
Yep.
Say again?
I spent 2 years purchasing good mohair and processing it. I wanted to know, because I'm a botanical dyer, I want to know if it's going to dye with botanicals. I want to spin it. I want to know if I can weave with it in the way that I weave. I wanted to know all of those things before I got, before I transitioned from sheep to goats. I wanted to know that, I wanted to love the fiber first.
Yeah.
Before I got the animals. So, you have alpacas right now. They are a whole adventure in carding and spinning and all of those things. You could spend a lifetime, and people do, just working with that fiber.
So how do you get to the point where you know what you want? I just started working with Shetland, and then Finn, a woman sent me from the East Coast. I'm in Colorado, and I'm just going to spin all of it for her and ship it back to her. But then I get to try out these different fibers.
Nice.
So
Did you say you're in Colorado?
I'm in Colorado.
Where are you in Colorado?
We just moved right outside of Denver on the south side.
I'm in Fort Collins.
Oh, get out.
I think you have a mentor.
Come to the farm, honey. We will have an awesome time.
Yes, I'll be there. Thanksgiving morning.
Yep.
So that's the part where, like, I'm a molecular biologist, so I like to research and I like the detail, but I can only do so many things while the baby's breastfeeding and sleeping.
Right.
I can't shower. I can't clean anything. So she sent me all this scoured wool in like grocery bags, right? Which is the perfect amount to sit there and comb and spin and spin, which I can do that if the baby's sleeping on me.
Right.
I looked at that Cheviot in the basement, and I told my girlfriend, she's got goats and bees and things down the road. I made friends with her. She has quail and all this stuff. But she's like, yeah, I had so much free wool, I threw it away because I had no time to deal with it. I don't want to throw it away. I promised my husband I would do something with it because I want to practice on it, and I want to dye it, and I want to practice scouring it, and don't want to pay $200 for, I don't know what those things are. Huge garbage bags full, and then screw it all up. So I think that I like Shetland better than Cheviot, but maybe I didn't scour it properly, and that's why it's driving me crazy. I think that I like the Shetland first and then the Finn. But how do I really know that that's what I like unless I read this book about
practice.
When you make
practice. Annie, the only thing, I'm sorry, I don't mean to jump in here, ladies.
Yeah, no, tell me.
Hi, Margot.
But the only way you're going to know what kind of fiber you like the best is take the time. We have a sale this weekend. We have a ton of wonderful vendors. They're going to have after sale albums if you don't catch their sales. And a lot of them have different types of fiber. There's so many different types of fiber. I mean, you've only tried.
And there's like 8 different kinds, and you try and spin them all.
There's not 8 different kinds, honey. There's so many different kinds. Like you've tried Finn, and you've tried Shetland, and you've tried your Cheviot or Cheviot. Okay, you've got Corriedale, you've got BFL, you've got Cotswold, you've got Leicester Longwool, you got there's Merino, but I'm not a big fan of Merino, but there are so many different types of fiber available, and the vendors in WAFA is you can pick up 1 to 2 ounces of fiber. And that's what I personally, as a spinner and a knitter, would recommend that you do and try out the different fibers. Just get a couple of ounces that's already prepped, whether it's roving or top. It's already prepped. You don't have to prep it. All you got to do is take a few minutes, kick back, relax. If you got some time when the baby's sleeping, and just spin it and see how you like it. Make sure you label everything that you spin. And then this will help you determine what fiber you like the best. And then knit yourself, if you know how to knit or crochet, knit yourself a swatch of the fiber that you have spun so that you have actually created a fabric, so that this way you've gone from the spinning to the knitting and have created the fabric. Do you like that fabric? Is that something that you're going to want to wear? Is that something you want your children to wear? That's the only way you're going to know what kind of fiber that you like. You know, the
advice.
fact that you were able to get that big bunch of fiber that's sitting down in your basement is awesome. But here you're sitting, I mean, Annie, I've been listening to you here going, I can't figure, I got to scour it. I got to do this. I don't have time. And it's like, don't take on too much at one time. Baby steps,
Right.
baby steps. And go
Rob-
ahead, Teddy.
Well, I was going to say, you know, Robin brought this up. I think, you know, what you may want to do, you know, you have the alpacas already, and you may not. I had alpacas. We had them for 2 years. I didn't love them. I'm a practical farmer. They went on to someone else who loved them, and we did something different. So there's, you know, there's no reason that you can't do that. But you may find an animal that you fall, you know, right now I have mohair coming out my ears. I want to blend that with other things. But I don't feel like I have to have necessarily all of those animals on my property. I'm going to source from, you know, Margot said that we have all these vendors. I'm going to find a WAFA vendor that has Cotswold or Rambouillet, or, you know, and I'm going to blend those things. So you might grow your a base fiber that you love, like alpaca or mohair, or you fall in love with Angora bunny, you know, whatever that is. There's so many other things that you can do with that base fiber. And there's no reason, unless you want that kind of farm, which is also a lovely thing.
And I would
have to have all of those different species on your farm, or right away.
Right. And I would jump in and say, as your kids get older, they may decide they want to show some animals for 4-H. They may want to pick a breed, you know, either Angora bunnies or a certain kind of sheep or something like that.
Yep.
You know, so that might be something to take into consideration when you're thinking, do I want to add a species or a breed, and what will it be? But then the other thing I wanted to say quick is, if you've got all that wool down in your basement, be real sure that you're watching it for moths or other kinds of insect vermin, because raw wool will attract things you didn't even know were around. So be
I was
careful.
going
You
to say
don't.
that if it's that big, you need to repackage that in like vacuum seal bags.
Right.
Annie, I'm a spinner. I'm not a farmer.
Sure.
I've explored different fibers. Couple that Margot didn't even mention. I can get my hands on Icelandic, and I can get my hands on Rambouillet, and they are grown and raised right up here in where I live in Canada. And I keep a journal of my spinning fiber on what I spun and what I thought of it, and would I go back to spinning it again? You know, those different things. And like Teddy, I'm a botanical dyer, and I'm constantly learning. And I dedicate my pans for that purpose of dyeing. I have pans that are dedicated for scouring, and I can only scour certain times of the year, and that's in the spring and the summer, because it's cold up here. And like Margot said, take small steps at a time.
Yep.
And learn what you want to learn from that step, and then move on to the next one, because you'll overwhelm yourself to the point where your brain's going to explode.
Right.
And you'll burn out.
And the other thing I'd say is, when you're looking for a new breed of sheep that you haven't tried, when you're speaking with the producer, see if they spin their own fiber, or do they have it milled into yarn, because individual flocks, even if they're of the same breed, the shepherds over time may have selected for different traits. I know in the Cotswold group, I have tended to select for finer, somewhat softer fleeces. Other people that are selling wool have selected for large frame, because they're in the show ring and the meat market. So not all Cotswold wool is alike, and I imagine not all Corriedale wool is alike. So if you can find producers who have a mind toward hand spinning or just wool production, as well as this is my breed, you might get a more fair assessment of whether you like their wool, that breeds wool, because they're not all the same. So, you know,
Yeah, and Robin is correct, because you had mentioned, Danny, you like Shetland. Well, both Cheryl and I mean, I love Shetland. Cheryl spins a lot of Shetland. And just in the Shetland breed alone, exactly what Robin says, you will find it coming to you from a 19 micron all the way to a 33 micron. So it depends on who the shepherd is, where it's, you know, what type of Shetland it is. And so we can't express this enough as spinners here, okay, and people that love to play with wool. Baby steps, a little bit at a time. And if you want to try a breed and you're not sure, we have the group. Reach out to the community and say, I'm looking at this kind of, you know, I want to try this kind of wool. You know, you will have so many people say, this is where I purchased mine. This is what I liked. It was this soft, but at this farm or from this vendor, it wasn't as soft. We're not dishing any vendor at all. We're just letting you know that, as Robin has stated, the shepherds breed for different characteristics of their wool. Don't hesitate to reach out to the community. You're fairly new here, Annie. We're here to help.
Yep. And really come to the farm.
Yeah, go visit Teddy. You will have a blast. Oh, but wait. Doesn't she need a farm sitter to do that? She's got animals, right? She can't take all her alpacas with her.
Right.
Sorry, I had to throw that in there. I
Baby.
thought that was kind of cute.
All right, you guys. I think we're gonna wind down here. Robin, this was wonderful. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. This has been delightful. It's just like sitting in a room full of friends and not feeling like you have to get over there and do something else, just to sit and enjoy. This is great.
And I remembered to push the record button. So so when I get it all reconstituted, I'll have these up on the WAFA page so that people can rewatch, or those who missed.
Oh, good. And
Robin,
I'm available. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Where's everybody from? Robin, where are you at?
I'm in New York State. I'm in the south central part of the state in the Finger Lakes region, wine country.
I'm in Saskatchewan, Canada.
And I'm in the Cascades of Oregon.
Wow.
Barbara's also in Oregon.
And Janice is in Washington.
Yep.
And she has a wonderful herd of Shetlands. If you want to talk Shetland with somebody, Janice is the gal. All right, you gals, have a wonderful evening and a happy Thanksgiving. And Robin has a show this weekend.
Yep.
I have a show this weekend. Janice has a show this weekend. So make sure you check it out. It'll be streaming on the Wool and Fiber Arts business page, the one with the big herd on the front of the page, and it'll be streaming all day Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Yep. Awesome people.
All right. Thank you all. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.